On a rainy day at the beach, a young boy named Tommy runs up and introduces himself to Rebecca, who is quietly watching the rain from under a wooden boardwalk. When he hears footsteps behind him, he suddenly runs into the heavy rain, leaving the girl without saying goodbye. After the rain stops, Rebecca changes her clothes and hears small stones tapping against her window. When she looks outside, she sees Tommy, and the two ride their bikes to the beach together. Later, Rebecca pretends to fall asleep in her new friend's room. Tommy's father, Ralph, receives a call from Rebecca's grandfather and allows her to stay the night. Happy about the news, the children excitedly continue playing together. The next day, Tommy brings Rebecca to an abandoned boat near the shore where they quietly watch the foggy coastline. At Rebecca's house, the two friends notice a tiny snail. Tommy says he plans to take it back to the sea the next day, but Rebecca reveals that she will soon leave for her mother's place in Japan on the 72nd floor. As Rebecca prepares to leave the room, Tommy follows her to the door and suddenly kisses her. Surprised, the girl quickly runs away. Later, while taking a bath, Rebecca receives a call from Tommy, who is watching a storm at the beach. He tells her he will see her off the next morning at the ferry because he wants to show her something, making Rebecca blush. However, their call suddenly ends when the bad weather interrupts the signal. The next morning at the dock, Rebecca looks back, but Tommy is nowhere to be seen. Her grandfather sends her off, and she looks sadly at the beach as the ferry slowly sails away. 12 years later, Rebecca returns as a young woman to her late grandfather's now empty house, hoping to find her childhood love. She rides her bike to Tommy's old home and meets his mother, Judith, who tells her that Tommy no longer lives there. Recognizing Rebecca, Judith jokingly explains that her son once wanted to chase after her to Tokyo because he missed his childhood sweetheart. She then points Rebecca toward the harbor near the embankment where Tommy now lives. Rebecca finds a quiet house by the harbor. She slowly slips inside while a dog watches her curiously. Inside, she notices a young woman lying on a bed reading a book. Moments later, a young man enters and asks who the stranger is. Rebecca simply smiles, and Tommy recognizes her through their silent look. Realizing who she is, the woman on the bed introduces herself as Rose, Tommy's current date. Soon after, the childhood friends naturally reconnect. Rebecca has graduated and now designs software for sonar devices that detect cracks in underground tanks. Tommy jokes that his dog seems strangely fond of Rebecca for letting her enter the house. Feeling jealous, Rose gets up and leaves. Noticing the awkward mood, Rebecca also decides to go. The next day, Rebecca sees Tommy playing in the rain, and the two head down to the beach together. Tommy explains that Rose is not his girlfriend, while casually taking off his clothes before running into the sea, splashing through the waves as Rebecca watches him. That evening, they share dinner at Rebecca's house. During the meal, Rebecca remembers the day Tommy actually came before she left for Japan. Curious, she asks what he wanted to show her back then. Expecting the question, Tommy takes a small matchbox from his pocket and hands it to her. Inside is the empty shell of the snail they found 12 years earlier. He had wanted Rebecca to take it with her to Japan as a memory. But on the morning she left, he overslept and missed the ferry. Instead, he kept the snail and cared for it for a year until it eventually died. That night, the two childhood friends confess their feelings for each other. Tommy kisses Rebecca, and she returns the kiss for a moment before pulling away, confused by the strong emotions between them. The next morning, they playfully chase each other along the beach. While lying on the sand, Tommy tells Rebecca that he will be gone for 2 days. When she insists on coming with him, he warns that it is too dangerous. Back at Tommy's house, he reveals his plan to secretly enter a biotechnology company called Sparkling Park, built on reclaimed wetlands. The facility secretly performs animal cloning. Tommy explains that he belongs to an environmental activist group called the Pollen Group, which plans to create chaos during the park's opening to expose the company's unethical actions. He even shows Rebecca a container filled with cockroaches that they plan to release into the crowd to disrupt the event. Although shocked by the plan, Rebecca decides to join him. That weekend, Tommy quickly loads his parents' car with the supplies needed for the mission. After saying goodbye to them, he and Rebecca drive away. During the long trip, Rebecca smiles at the strange plan involving cockroaches. At one point, she asks Tommy to stop the car in the middle of a field so she can relieve herself. She steps out and walks farther away, and Tommy follows shortly after. Suddenly, Rebecca hears the sound of a terrible crash as another vehicle hits Tommy. Dazed, she slowly returns to the car and stares in shock at his lifeless body, silently struggling to hold back her tears. Later, alone in her room, Rebecca opens the matchbox Tommy once gave her and discovers a folded note inside written in Tommy's childhood handwriting. It promises that he will wait for her while she is away. She scrolls through pictures of him on her laptop, including a video of him smiling during one of his protests. Overwhelmed with grief, Rebecca visits Tommy's grave, where she seems to form a plan. Soon after, she finds Tommy's father, Ralph, standing by the sea and offers him comfort as he mourns the loss of his only son. Later, Rebecca invites both of Tommy's grieving parents to dinner. Judith, however, refuses to sit quietly and asks Rebecca to explain what she wants to say. Rebecca leads them to a newly renovated nursery. Judith looks at the decorations with a sad smile, thinking that Rebecca is expecting a child. Instead, Rebecca reveals that Tommy could be reborn through her. Judith looks at her husband, who already understands what Rebecca means. Rebecca then shows them a consent form from the Department of Genetic Replication, which offers to retrieve DNA from the dead to create a clone. Even though she is not very religious, Judith refuses to disturb the dead and chooses to accept their loss. Ralph, however, thinks differently. The next day, he gives Rebecca the signed consent form and tells her that he and Judith plan to move far away. He encourages Rebecca to stay near the coast because Tommy always loved the sea. Before leaving, he asks her to think carefully about the decision, but Rebecca has already made up her mind. Soon after, Rebecca undergoes the procedure at the Department of Genetic Replication. Rose, who now works there as a nurse, notices Rebecca leaving the facility. Months later, a pregnant Rebecca smiles softly as she feels the baby moving inside her. She visits Tommy's grave and speaks to him with quiet hope, believing he will soon return. Not long afterward, Rebecca gives birth to Tommy's clone through a cesarean operation. 3 months later, she walks along the beach with the baby in her arms. She passes other mothers with their babies, who kindly offer her some pie, but she politely declines and returns home alone. Over the years, Rebecca raises Tommy alone as his mother. One day, the young boy refuses to listen to her and hides under a blanket. To comfort him, Rebecca tells him that his father died in a car accident before he was born, referring to the fate of the real Tommy. The boy, a clone of the original Tommy as a child, grows very close to Rebecca. At the same time, Rebecca shows a deep and unusual affection toward him, loving him far more intensely than most mothers. One day in the woods, Rebecca notices Tommy and his friend Eric watching a girl named Dimma playing with her rabbit. Tommy looks at the girl with curiosity, and she looks back for a moment before saying goodbye and walking away. Rebecca tries to invite Dimma over, but the girl politely refuses. Later, Tommy asks Eric if he can smell Dimma, and Eric says yeah. Confused, Rebecca learns from the boys that clones have a special scent caused by their skin. Unknown to Tommy, he himself is also a clone of Rebecca's lost love. At school, Rebecca faces criticism from teachers and other mothers who heard that she invited the cloned girl Dimma into her home. Rebecca sees nothing wrong with it, but the women argue that the idea of clones is too complicated for their children to understand, even though cloning has become common in the news. The teacher later reveals that Dimma is actually a clone of her own grandmother, shocking the other parents. Unaware that Rebecca's son is also a clone, they continue criticizing the practice. Distressed, Rebecca pretends to agree with them and quietly leaves. She picks up Tommy, who is happily playing with water balloons with his friends. Later, Rebecca and Tommy collect pine cones in the woods to prepare for his birthday party. But when the day comes, none of the invited children arrive. Rebecca learns that the parents discovered Tommy as a clone and refuse to let their children attend. Even though the house is empty, Rebecca still serves Tommy his birthday cake. The boy, unaware of the truth, wonders if Dimma might be the reason no one came. Heartbroken, he hugs his mother while Rebecca begins to cry. Soon after, they move to a quiet house by the sea to escape the judgment of others. Years later, Tommy grows older. Rebecca continues living alone with him by the sea. Eventually, Tommy discovers the truth about his origin and the complicated feelings that shaped his life. One morning, Rebecca brings breakfast to Tommy's room and finds a young woman named Monica hiding under his bedsheets. At the table, Tommy casually tells his mother that Monica will be staying with them for a while. Rebecca smiles and pretends to accept his girlfriend. Later, Tommy sits on a swing with Monica, excitedly talking about the uniqueness of living things and sharing his interest in science. Monica listens but finds his passion somewhat childish. Rebecca remains alone in the quiet beach house, and that is the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Comment below which movie you would like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.